So I just finished watching Cam Newton's podcast with guest K Michelle, and sis said some things that just lit me up. So I decided to come out here on the porch with my glass of wine, watch the sunset, and then I said, you know what? I have got to have a conversation with the season gang and with my nieces and nephews about this. It was a very good interview. Once again, there was another woman on Cam Newton's podcast admonishing him for having all of these children with all of these different women. However, K. Michelle came at it from a slightly different perspective. I thought it was mature, which is something different coming from K. Michelle, but it was good, and I wanted to talk to my season gang about it. So, here we go. K. Michelle did an appeal to black men to start back choosing black women, protecting black women, and creating homes instead of creating a bunch of baby mamas, a bunch of kids that you have to visit in different places, a bunch of kids that have to wake up and daddy not be in the home, or daddy might be missing this, that, and the third. Now, I'm not putting all the blame on daddy. There are a lot of women that need to take responsibility and accountability, and I'm going to talk about that too. But I just thought it was interesting that on this podcast, when she could have been talking about her country music career, which she did mention, and she gave a parallel for it, which led to this conversation, she decided to make an appeal to black men, and it broke her up a little bit. So I just kind of want to talk about it. K. Michelle mentioned that, she is kind of tired of the situation, and watching the differences between the way things are handled in the R&B industry and in the country industry. She indicated that in country music, a man that's not married is not respected, and that they typically end their workday at a decent time so that you can get back home to your family and do the things that you need to do. Contrary to how they do things in R&B, where they might be in the studio till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, not really caring about their families and what's going on with their families because they're working. We also romanticize a ratchet lifestyle, rapping about having more than one woman and doing all kind of nasty things with these women. And women rap about, taking men's money and not being serious. And we've seen a lot of people get pregnant out of wedlock in that industry and have to go through some things. And unfortunately, even as wealthy people, they're going through the same things that the girls in the hood are going through. They're just doing it in front of the camera instead of behind the camera. So I just thought I wanted to come on here and have a conversation, with you guys about it. I think it is imperative that black men continue to choose black women, and I really don't think that is an overall issue. I think that, again, statistically, black men marry more black women than they marry any other race of women or any other group of women. However, they do still have the baby mama drama. Most men with children have children with more than one person. I too have perpetuated that way of living. I've never been married. I'm 56 years old, never been married. Got 2 baby daddies, if you want to call them that. They were very active in my children's lives, but my children did not wake up with them every day. My son did wake up with his dad for the first 3 or 4 years of his life. Then we parted ways, and I moved into my house, and he lived in his. And the kids were always welcome to go back and forth. There was never an issue between me and the person that I was dating. However, it does make a difference when a child, wakes up in a happy, healthy environment. I'm not sitting here saying that you need to stay together or get married to somebody just before you get pregnant, because we know how many people were miserable in those, shotgun situations back in the day. I'm asking that, people get to know each other, learn to love each other before they start a family. Now, again, I'm outside. Sounds like there's a drag race or something going on out here, and I apologize. Somebody in their Mustang decided to come through here and make a whole lot of noise while I'm on the porch recording my video with you guys. But I kind of want to set the tone for accountability, not just for the fellas, but for the women as well. We need to be accountable. We need to stop having kids with people that we don't want to spend our lives with. We need to stop having children with people that we barely know. And we definitely need to stop having children with somebody who isn't taking care of children that they already have. A man can be rich, and he can be present when available, but a man in the house helping to make decisions, helping to guide and direct these children into adulthood, especially these young men that are growing up in these single mama households. I was a single mom, and I'm not saying anything about that. And I've said many a times before, I had my village. I got my kids' fathers were very active in their lives. I had my grandfather, I have my uncle, I have my brothers. I have lots of good male role models. But do I think there would have been a difference if my children had grown up in a household with me and their dad, or a man that filled that void? Absolutely. I absolutely do. Now, we know all of the reasons, all the systematic racism and all the years of, welfare coming along and taking the black man out of the home and all of those things. But we also have to be accountable as a race of people. Drugs were dropped in our communities, but nobody made us use them. Government assistance was available, but if our men had jobs and things of that nature, there would never been any need for assistance. Now, how we got into this point of 2025 where we have, one man with 8 or 9 kids from 8 or 9 women, or a woman with 5 or 6 kids from 4 or 5 men, I don't know how we got here, but here we are. And we need to make some changes. We need the black nuclear family back together so that we can grow and raise productive young men and young ladies that understand how things are supposed to be instead of how things currently are. The glorification of calling women out of their names and saying all these nasty things, and the glorification of women rapping about getting over on this man or taking advantage of that man. We don't see any other race of people doing stuff like that. And I do believe that it's time for us to stop. K. Michelle said some things that settled in my spirit and that I wanted to come and say to my season gang. Now, for those of us that are, in our 50s, our kids are grown. We have already made the mistakes. We have already done all the things. And like I said in many times before, we did the best we could with what we had or what was afforded to us at the time. So I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. But when you know better, you do better. I have a 28-year-old daughter. I don't ever want her to be a baby mama. I don't ever want her to have to get divorced. I have a 23-year-old son who does not have children yet. I don't want my grandchildren growing up in a household, without my son being there, because that's the way that he ended up growing up. I just don't want that for my grandchildren, and I don't want that for the children, of the future. So I just want to kind of have a conversation with my nieces and nephews out here. If you don't think you can make the right choice when choosing a partner, appeal to some of the men in your life to help you out with that. Men know men. So, if you don't have your grandfather or your uncle or someone that can meet these guys and help you to make a good decision about them before you have children with them, I live in a, semi-small town, and everybody knows everybody. So you can always find somebody that, knows someone if you date within the proximity of the people you know and people that know people. Sex is easy. But raising a whole human being is not something that any woman should do by herself or that any man should do by himself. Now, by no means am I telling you to stay in a bad situation or a situation that's not working for you. And if you find yourself in the situation I found myself in, then my recommendation is to take advantage of your village. And as a mom, be open to the person that has fathered your children to being in those children's lives if he so chooses to be. And if he doesn't, my recommendation is to quickly find a substitute Let's not repeat the cycle over and over and over again and then think something for us is going to change. It's not going to change. If we don't get our mindset straightened out, we'll continue to choose people that don't choose us, that don't protect us, and that don't really want to spend time with us. Like I said, sex is easy. You can have sex with anybody, but there is no excuse to get pregnant or to pregnate somebody. There's too many forms of birth control out here. Women have so many opportunities to know when they're ovulating and know when they should not be doing certain things, and I recommend doing it. I am not from the school of thought that where you tell people to stop having sex. In this day and time, that is never going to happen. Sex, 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 sex. It's on the TV. It's in the music. You know, when you meet somebody, before you even go on a date, people tend to send dirty pictures and are sleeping together. So I'm not one of those people that's going to sit here and tell you what not to do. I'm just going to tell you how to do it better. And my answer to all of that is to do everything you can to protect yourself, because you don't want to find out that you picked the wrong person after that person is having to parent a child with you, or you have to parent a child with them. And even if you get along, if it's somebody that you don't want to spend time with or that does not want to spend time with you and to be in a household with those kids, that's not somebody you need to have a child with. Now, I also know that there are people that get married and get divorced and they end up having to live in that situation. That's not who I'm talking to. I'm talking to the young ladies that have 2 or 3 children with 2 or 3 different men. I am one of those people. Or these men that have 2 or 3 kids with 2 or 3 different women, and you having to rip and run and pay child support and do all of those things. Just imagine if you guys put your 2 incomes together and raise that family together. That's what I'm talking about. I want us to get out of all of this wretched behavior and all of the things that are going on in our communities today, and let's make a difference. Let's go back to doing things. And I think that starts with getting some help from who we are choosing. Don't be so quick to hop in the sack with somebody unless you are simply wanting to have sex and you are fully protected. There's no chance of having a baby with someone that you barely know or someone that you know you don't want to spend time with or that's not going to be good to you. Now, my vision for the future is that we need the nuclear family. We need our black families. We need our communities. We need to go back to a time where we depended on each other and, we could do things together. I know people have always been cheaters. There's always been things that are going on. I know that, and I'm not trying to even get into all of that. What I'm trying to get into is that we need to make better choices before we have children with people that we don't want to actually share our lives with. If we can just start there, that would make me extremely happy. The love we crave starts with self-worth, and that means not laying down with dogs and then getting up with fleas and then complaining about it and then making posts about it and then being upset about it. If this young man has children with 2 other women, why in the world would you have children with him and think that your situation is going to be different? It's not likely that it's going to be. Now, I'm not sitting here acting like all men are this way or all women are this way. I understand the difference. I'm talking to those that this message resonates with, or those that have found themselves in this position. I don't need y'all coming on here telling me that not all men are like that and not all women are like that. I know that. I have some friends that are happily married and only have children with their husbands and all of those things. So I understand that. But for K. Michelle to feel like she needed to bring this up with Cam Newton, Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, with all the stuff that's happening with Shannon Sharp, the things that we see happening in the media, sometimes we have to speak on it when we can speak on it. So let's start being real about what we want. If you simply want to have sex, you can do that without having a baby with everybody that you have sex with, male or female. Sex is easy. It's not the vibes. We're talking legacy. I'm not talking about who you sleep with. We'll get into body counts and all that stuff later if we must, because I'm not one to get into all of that. But if we make a decision to have children with somebody, we need to know that person. We need to know what kind of life that child can be expected to have. And when I was 26 years old, when I had my first child, and even at 32, when I had my second child, that's not where my head was at. And I wish I had listened to somebody who knew better. Because although my outcome came out pretty damn good and I'm not complaining about it, I know that my children could have had better lives if we had a nuclear whole family where me and my significant other loved each other first, chose each other first, and made sure that we were in an intact situation before we had children. Because I too created two broken homes, and while I never would have looked at it that way when I was doing it, the truth of the matter is that is what it is. So if this hit home for you, if this is something, that you have had to experience, share this video with somebody else. I'm not just sitting on here talking to hear myself talk. If I reach one and can teach one, then I have done what I need to do. So, like I always say, make sure your notifications are on so you don't miss anything that I post. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. I have the best season gang out there. We have come such a long way. I'm gonna keep on posting. I'm gonna keep on doing the things that I'm doing. But I just really feel like, as a black woman who made some mistakes, and I got two kids out here that I don't want to make the same mistakes, even though their fathers were wonderful human beings. I created broken homes. Cam Newton has created broken homes. Country Wayne has created broken homes. And because those fellas have money, Nick Cannon, because those Future, because those fellas have money and they can make up for their situation in different ways, I know that many of us cannot. And I don't want us to find ourselves in that situation. So until the next time, it's the Seasoned Lady signing off. I hope each and every one of you have a wonderful afternoon. Don't forget, get outside. Smell the roses, walk in the grass, embrace nature. It'll make you feel better. Until the next time, toodles.